The coffee cup shattered against the marble floor, spraying brown liquid across designer shoes worth more than most people's monthly rent. Victoria Hale didn't flinch. She never did. The trembling waitress started apologizing, but Victoria's cold stare had already moved past her, searching for someone else to blame, someone else to destroy. That's when the elderly man's cane caught the edge of her table. What happened next would make headlines across Manhattan, but not for the reasons anyone expected. The collision between New York's most ruthless billionaire and a struggling single father would change lives in ways neither could imagine. If you want to see how one moment of courage transformed everything, stay until the end. Hit that like button and comment what city you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel. The morning started like every other Saturday for Ethan Carter. Too early, too cold, and with his daughter Chloe bouncing on his mattress at 6:47 a.m. "Daddy! Daddy! It's pancake day!" Ethan groaned, pulling the thin comforter over his head. The apartment was freezing again. He'd need to call the landlord about the heating, which meant another argument he didn't have energy for. "5 more minutes, Bug," he mumbled. "You said that yesterday about bedtime and it turned into an hour." Chloe's 7-year-old logic was unfortunately sound. Ethan cracked one eye open. His daughter stood beside the bed wearing mismatched socks, her mother's old NYU sweatshirt hanging past her knees, and the most determined expression a first grader could muster. Her dark hair stuck up in 12 different directions. "Did you brush your hair?" "Did you?" Ethan sat up, running a hand through his own disaster of brown hair. "Touché." The studio apartment in Washington Heights wasn't much, 648 square feet that somehow needed to function as bedroom, living room, office, and Chloe's entire world. Ethan had tried to make it work. Chloe's bed sat in the corner behind a curtain he'd rigged from a shower rod and bed sheets. His own mattress folded against the wall during the day. Their kitchen consisted of a hot plate, a mini fridge, and a microwave that only worked if you held the door closed. But it was theirs, and it was warm, mostly. "All right, Bug, get dressed. Real clothes, not pajamas." "These are real clothes." "Chloe, fine." She stomped behind her curtain with the dramatic flair only a 7-year-old could achieve. Ethan checked his phone. 3 missed calls from the hospital billing department. He silenced the phone and shoved it in his pocket. Today was Saturday. Saturday was sacred. Saturday was their day. 20 minutes later, they stepped into the December cold. Snow had fallen overnight, turning the Manhattan streets into something almost magical. Chloe immediately started making footprints, deliberately stepping in fresh snow patches. "Look, Daddy, I'm making art." "You're making wet socks is what you're doing. Art is supposed to make you uncomfortable." Ethan had no idea where she learned that, but he couldn't argue. They walked the 8 blocks to Rosie's cafe, their breath fogging in the morning air. Chloe talked the entire way, about her friend Maya's new puppy, about how her teacher Mrs. Patterson said she was the best reader in class, about how she definitely, absolutely, 100% needed new boots because these ones were scientifically too small. Ethan listened to every word. These walks, these moments, they were why he kept going, why he worked double shifts, why he smiled when the hospital called about bills he couldn't pay, why he pretended everything was fine when it absolutely wasn't. Rosie's Cafe occupied a corner spot on Amsterdam Avenue, the kind of place that had been there so long nobody remembered when it opened. The windows were always fogged, the coffee was always hot, and Rosie herself, 70-something with an accent that mixed Brooklyn and somewhere in Eastern Europe, remembered everyone's name. The bell chimed as they entered. "Ethan, Chloe, my babies." Rosie emerged from behind the counter, arms wide. She hugged Chloe first, then Ethan, leaving flower handprints on his jacket. "Your usual table is waiting." Their usual table was by the window, second from the left. It wobbled if you leaned too hard on the right side, but it was theirs. Every Saturday, 8 a.m. Chloe scrambled into her seat, already reaching for the sugar packets to build her traditional Saturday sugar packet house. Ethan settled across from her, feeling something in his chest unclench. This place, this routine, it was the closest thing to peace he'd known in 3 years. "The usual?" asked Maria, their regular waitress. She was young, maybe 22, putting herself through community college. "Please," Ethan said. "And Maria, how's your mom doing?" Maria's smile faltered slightly. "Better. The surgery went well. She's home now." "That's great. Really great." "Thanks for asking." Maria squeezed his shoulder before heading to the kitchen. Chloe was already on her third story of her sugar packet skyscraper. Daddy, do you think buildings get lonely? What? Like, do you think tall buildings wish they had friends their size? Ethan considered this seriously. With Chloe, you couldn't dismiss questions. She'd remember and ask again later. Maybe. But I think they're happy watching over the smaller buildings, like protecting them. Like you protect me? Something caught in Ethan's throat. Yeah, Bug. Like that. The cafe was filling up with the Saturday morning crowd. Old Mr. Chen reading his Chinese newspaper. The Columbia students cramming for exams. Young couples on first dates trying too hard. It was warm, comfortable, familiar. Then the door opened. The temperature in the room didn't actually drop, but it felt like it did. Victoria Hale stood in the doorway like she'd walked onto a stage. Except she hadn't walked. She'd arrived. There was a difference. She was tall, maybe 5'9" in heels that added another 3 inches. Her coat probably cost more than Ethan's entire wardrobe. Her hair was pulled back so severely it looked painful, and her face, beautiful in the way of people who'd weaponized their appearance, showed absolutely no emotion. But it was her eyes that made everyone look away. Cold, calculating. The eyes of someone who viewed people as assets or obstacles. 2 men in suits flanked her. Security, Ethan realized. Who brought security to a cafe? The comfortable chatter died. Mr. Chen looked up from his paper, then quickly down again. The Columbia student stopped talking mid-sentence. Even Rosie, who feared nothing, seemed to hesitate. Victoria scanned the room like a general surveying a battlefield. Her gaze passed over Ethan without seeing him, dismissed Chloe entirely, and landed on the only empty table, the 2-seater by the radiator. She walked to it, sat, never removed her coat. One of the security guys started to sit with her. Outside, she said. Not loud. Didn't need to be. Both men left immediately. Maria approached Victoria's table with visible reluctance. Ethan couldn't hear what was said, but he saw Maria nod several times, write nothing down, and practically run to the counter. Daddy, why is everyone being weird? Chloe whispered. I don't know, Bug. But he did know. He recognized the energy. He'd seen it before, in hospitals, in courthouse hallways, in places where people with power reminded everyone else how powerless they were. Their food arrived. Blueberry pancakes for Chloe, scrambled eggs and toast for Ethan. Coffee that Rosie kept refilling without asking. Ethan watched Chloe drown her pancakes in syrup and tried to pretend everything was normal. Then the bell chimed again. Mr. Harrison shuffled in, moving slowly with his cane. He'd been a high school English teacher in the Bronx for 42 years before retiring. Ethan knew this because Mr. Harrison told the story every Saturday while doing the crossword puzzle alone at whatever table was available. Today, no tables were available. Mr. Harrison stood there, cane in one hand, newspaper in the other, looking around the packed cafe. His shoulders sagged slightly. Maria noticed. She bit her lip, glanced at Rosie, then made a decision. She walked to Victoria's table. Ethan couldn't hear what Maria said, but he saw her gesture to Mr. Harrison, saw her gesture to the empty chair at Victoria's table. Victoria didn't even look up from her phone. No. One word. Flat. Final. Maria's face flushed. Ma'am, he's a regular and we're completely full. I said no. The cafe had gone completely silent now, everyone pretending not to watch while absolutely watching. Mr. Harrison raised one hand. It's fine, Maria. I'll come back later. But Mr. Harrison, it's fine, dear. His voice was kind, but Ethan could see the hurt in his eyes. The old man turned toward the door. Ethan stood up. Mr. Harrison, he called, take my seat. I need to stretch my legs anyway. Chloe looked up at him, confused. But Daddy, we just got our food. It's okay, Bug. We'll share your chair. Mr. Harrison's face transformed. Oh no, son, I couldn't. Please. I insist. Ethan pulled out his chair, gestured for the old man to sit. Mr. Harrison's eyes got watery. You're a good man, Ethan Carter. Just making room for a friend. Ethan squeezed into Chloe's chair, which was ridiculous. He was 6'1", and the chair was designed for children or very small adults. Chloe giggled as he tried to arrange his legs under the table. Daddy, you look silly. Silly is my natural state. From the corner of his eye, Ethan noticed Victoria looking up from her phone. For just a second, she watched him awkwardly sharing a child's chair with his daughter. Her expression was unreadable. Then she looked away, and Ethan forgot about her entirely. Mr. Harrison settled into Ethan's chair with a grateful sigh. "This is very kind of you both." "It's what neighbors do," Ethan said. Chloe offered Mr. Harrison one of her pancakes. "This one looks like a face. See? The blueberries are eyes." "So it does." Mr. Harrison's laugh was genuine. "You know, I once had a student who could find faces in everything: clouds, wallpaper, even math problems." The old man launched into a story about teaching in the 70s. Ethan half listened, focused on cutting Chloe's pancakes into smaller pieces while balanced on a chair clearly not meant for adults. The cafe's normal rhythm gradually returned. Conversations resumed. Forks clinked against plates. Then Maria brought Victoria's coffee. Ethan didn't see what happened exactly. He was trying to prevent Chloe from using syrup as paint, but he heard it. "This is cold." Victoria's voice cut through the ambient noise like a knife. I'm sorry, ma'am. I'll get you a fresh cup." "I asked for it hot." "Do you not understand the word hot?" "Yes, ma'am, I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix incompetence." The cafe went quiet again. Maria's hands were shaking as she reached for the cup. Ethan watched the young woman's face flush red, saw her eyes getting wet. "I'll bring a new one right away." "You'll bring me your manager." "Ma'am, please, I can get your manager." Rosie was already coming out from behind the counter, wiping her hands on her apron. She was 73 years old and had survived things most people couldn't imagine, but even she looked wary approaching Victoria's table. "I am the owner," Rosie said carefully. "There is a problem?" "Your waitress brought me cold coffee." Rosie glanced at the cup, steam still rising from it. "It looks hot to me." "Are you calling me a liar?" "I am saying the coffee is hot." Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Do you know who I am?" "You are a customer in my cafe." "I'm Victoria Hale. I own Hale Technologies. I employ 12,000 people. I've destroyed companies for less than bad service." Rosie didn't blink. "And I have owned this cafe for 47 years. We serve good coffee, good food, and we treat people with respect. If you cannot be respectful, you can leave." The entire cafe held its breath. Victoria stood slowly. She was taller than Rosie, younger, infinitely more powerful. The two women faced each other across the small table. "Do you have any idea what one phone call from me could do to this place?" Victoria's voice was quiet now, dangerous. "Do you have any idea?" Rosie replied, just as quietly, "how little I care?" Ethan saw something flicker in Victoria's eyes. Surprise, maybe, or respect, but it vanished quickly. "Fine." Victoria pulled out her phone. "I'll take my coffee to go." "No." Everyone turned. The word had come from Chloe. "Chloe," Ethan started, but his daughter was already sliding off their shared chair. She walked right up to Victoria Hale, this tiny 7-year-old in mismatched socks approaching one of the most powerful women in New York. "You're being mean," Chloe said simply. Victoria stared down at her. "Excuse me?" "My daddy says when people are mean, it's because they're sad inside. Are you sad inside?" The cafe was so quiet, Ethan could hear the radiator hissing. Victoria's perfect composure cracked, just for a second. Her eyes widened. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked like someone had slapped her. "Chloe, come here," Ethan said quietly, standing up. His heart was pounding. "You didn't let your 7-year-old daughter confront billionaires. That's how you ended up destroyed." But Chloe wasn't done. "Maria's really nice. She always remembers that I like extra syrup. And Mr. Harrison tells the best stories. And Rosie makes the best pancakes in the whole world. And you're making everyone feel bad. And that's not nice." Victoria looked at Chloe like she was a puzzle Victoria couldn't solve. Then Mr. Harrison shifted in his seat. His cane, propped against the table, started to fall. Everything happened in slow motion. The cane hit the floor with a clatter. Mr. Harrison, startled, jerked forward. His elbow caught the edge of Victoria's table. The coffee cup, the allegedly cold coffee, tipped, fell, and dumped its entire contents across Victoria's lap. Victoria shot to her feet with a gasp. Brown liquid spread across her white coat, her dress, dripping onto shoes that probably cost thousands. "Oh no! Oh my goodness!" Mr. Harrison struggled to stand, his face stricken. I'm so sorry. I didn't mean my cane. I'm so sorry. Maria rushed over with napkins, but Victoria slapped them away. You clumsy old fool. The words exploded out of her. Do you have any idea what this coat cost? What these shoes cost? Of course you don't. You probably shop at thrift stores. Mr. Harrison's face went pale. Ma'am, I truly apologize. It was an accident. An accident? You could barely walk straight. You shouldn't be allowed in public. Hey! Ethan moved forward, but Victoria kept going. Someone like you, shuffling around, getting in everyone's way, you're a liability. A hazard. This entire morning has been a disaster because of incompetent waitresses and clumsy old men who can't control their own bodies. Mr. Harrison looked like he'd been punched. The proud retired teacher who'd educated hundreds of students reduced to shame in front of a cafe full of people. Nobody moved, nobody spoke, except Ethan. That's enough. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut through Victoria's tirade like a bell. She turned to him, coffee still dripping from her coat. Who the hell are you? Someone who knows when to sit down and shut up. Ethan stepped between Victoria and Mr. Harrison. He apologized. It was an accident. You're making a scene. Victoria's eyes went wide with disbelief. I'm making a scene? You humiliated a waitress over coffee temperature. You refused to share a table with an elderly man. You just verbally attacked someone who apologized for an accident. So yes, you're making a scene. Do you have any idea who you're talking to? I know exactly who I'm talking to. Someone who thinks money means they can treat people like garbage. The cafe collectively gasped. Victoria's face went white, then red. I could destroy you. One phone call. I could ruin your life. You could try. Ethan didn't move. But first, you're going to apologize to Mr. Harrison, to Maria, and to Rosie. I will do no such thing. Then you're leaving. Now. They stood inches apart. The struggling single father in his thrift store jacket, facing down the billionaire CEO in her ruined designer clothes. Victoria's hands were shaking. With rage, Ethan thought at first. But then he looked closer and saw something else in her eyes. Fear. Not fear of him. Fear of something else, something deeper. You don't know anything about me, she said quietly. You're right. I don't. But I know you just hurt someone who didn't deserve it. That's enough. For a long moment, Victoria just stared at him. The entire cafe waited. Then Chloe appeared at Ethan's side, slipping her small hand into his. It's okay to say sorry, she told Victoria. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. Something in Victoria's face collapsed. Just for a second, the mask slipped. Ethan saw exhaustion, loneliness, pain, a lifetime of it, compressed into a single expression before she caught herself. She looked away. The word came out rough. I apologize for raising my voice. It wasn't a good apology. It barely qualified as an apology at all. But Mr. Harrison, kind to his core, nodded. Apology accepted, miss. Victoria grabbed her purse, turned, and walked out of the cafe without another word. Her security team scrambled to follow. The door closed. The bell chimed. Slowly, conversation resumed, but quieter now, thoughtful. Rosie brought Mr. Harrison a fresh cup of tea on the house. Maria squeezed Ethan's shoulder as she passed. Chloe climbed back into their shared chair and returned to her pancakes like nothing world-shaking had just occurred. But Ethan stood there, heart still racing, realizing he'd just confronted one of the most powerful people in New York City. Daddy? Chloe looked up at him. You're still standing. Yeah, Bug, just thinking. What are you thinking about? Ethan sat down, pulled Chloe close. About how sometimes the right thing and the smart thing aren't the same thing. Was standing up for Mr. Harrison the right thing? Yes. Then it was also the smart thing. 7-year-old wisdom. Ethan kissed the top of her head. Outside, through the fogged window, he caught a glimpse of Victoria Hale standing on the sidewalk. She was on her phone, probably calling someone to fire or sue or destroy. Her security team stood at attention. Snow was starting to fall again. For just a moment, she lowered the phone and looked back at the cafe. Ethan couldn't read her expression. Then a black car pulled up, she got in, and she was gone. Daddy, can I have more pancakes? Sure, Bug. Ethan signaled Maria, and life in Rosie's cafe continued. But something had shifted. Something had changed. Ethan didn't know it yet, but that moment, standing up to Victoria Hale, refusing to back down, had set something in motion. Outside, snow fell on Manhattan. Inside, a single father shared a too-small chair with his daughter and tried to forget about the woman with the coldest eyes he'd ever seen. He had no way of knowing that Victoria Hale, sitting in her Mercedes as it crawled through Saturday traffic, was replaying every second of that encounter. No way of knowing that for the first time in a decade, Victoria Hale was questioning everything. No way of knowing that the struggling single dad and the ruthless billionaire would see each other again very soon. And when they did, nothing would ever be the same. The Mercedes sat in traffic on Amsterdam Avenue, barely moving. Victoria stared at her phone screen without seeing it. Her assistant had sent 17 messages. Her CFO needed approval on the Singapore deal. The board meeting was in 40 minutes. She didn't care about any of it. My daddy says when people are mean, it's because they're sad inside. The child's voice echoed in her head, those huge eyes looking up at her without fear, without calculation, just honest concern. Are you sad inside? Victoria's hand trembled as she raised it to her face. When had that started? The trembling? Ms. Hale? Her driver glanced in the rearview mirror. Are you all right? I'm fine, Marcus. But she wasn't fine. She hadn't been fine in years. The coffee stain spread across her coat like an accusation. $3,000 ruined. She should be furious. Should already have her lawyers drafting papers, her PR team preparing statements. Instead, she kept seeing that man's face. The single father who'd stood between her and the elderly teacher like he had every right to challenge her. You don't know anything about me, she'd said. You're right, I don't. But I know you just hurt someone who didn't deserve it. That's enough. Nobody had spoken to her like that in a decade. Not employees, not board members, not even her own family. Everyone was too afraid, too careful, too aware of what she could do to them. Everyone except a struggling single dad in a thrift store jacket. Victoria's phone buzzed. Her assistant again. Victoria, the board is asking about your location. Should I tell them you're running late? She looked at the message for a long moment. Then she typed back. Cancel the meeting. The response was immediate. Cancel? But the Singapore deal? Reschedule for Monday. I need the weekend. Are you sure? Mr. Peterson won't be happy. Victoria turned off her phone. Marcus nearly drove into the car ahead when he saw the notification. In 5 years of driving Victoria Hale, he'd never seen her turn off her phone, never seen her cancel a board meeting, never seen her do anything that wasn't calculated 3 moves ahead. Ms. Hale, should I take you home? Victoria looked out the window at the snowy streets. People walking with shopping bags, couples holding hands, a kid trying to catch snowflakes on his tongue. When was the last time she'd just walked in the snow? Take me to the office, Marcus. He nodded, relieved. This made sense. Victoria always went to the office. But when they arrived at the Hale Technologies Tower, 63 floors of glass and steel dominating the Manhattan skyline, Victoria didn't get out immediately. Marcus, do you have children? The driver nearly choked. Yes, ma'am. 2 daughters, 8 and 11. Do they tell you when you're being mean? I'm sorry? Your daughters. Do they call you out when you're wrong? Marcus met her eyes in the mirror. For the first time, he saw something vulnerable there. All the time, ma'am. Comes with the territory. And that doesn't bother you? It's the best part of being a dad. Means they're not afraid of me. Means I'm doing something right. Victoria nodded slowly. Thank you, Marcus. She got out of the car and walked into her building, leaving her driver staring after her in confusion. The lobby went silent the moment she entered. Security guards straightened. The receptionist's smile froze. 2 junior executives heading to the elevator suddenly remembered urgent business elsewhere. Victoria barely noticed. She rode the private elevator to the 63rd floor, walked past her assistant without speaking, and locked herself in her office. The view from here was supposed to be inspiring. All of Manhattan spread beneath her, proof of everything she'd built. But today it just looked gray. She pulled off the ruined coat, dropped it on the floor, sat behind her desk, stared at the photos on the wall, Victoria shaking hands with mayors, governors, senators. Victoria accepting awards. Victoria standing alone at podium after podium, smiling that cold, perfect smile. Not a single photo of her actually happy. Her intercom buzzed. "Miss Hale, I have the quarterly reports. Not now, Jennifer." "But you asked for these by noon." "I said not now." Silence. Then, quietly, "Yes, ma'am." Victoria spun her chair to face the window. 57 stories below, people went about their Saturday, living lives that didn't revolve around market share and hostile takeovers and crushing anyone who stood in their way. She'd built this empire from nothing, clawed her way up from a studio apartment in Queens, working 3 jobs while finishing her MBA. She'd been brilliant, ruthless, focused. She'd sacrificed everything, relationships, friendships, any semblance of a personal life, to reach the top. And she'd made it. Victoria Hale, CEO. Victoria Hale, billionaire. Victoria Hale, the woman who destroyed companies and ended careers with a single phone call. Victoria Hale, who couldn't remember the last time someone had hugged her. It's okay to say sorry. It doesn't make you weak. It makes you brave. The little girl's words hit harder than any business rival ever had. Victoria opened her laptop, typed Ethan Carter, New York into the search engine, then stopped. What was she doing? Searching for some random single dad who'd embarrassed her in public? She closed the laptop, then opened it again. This was insane. She should be preparing for Monday's rescheduled board meeting, not obsessing over a cafe confrontation. But her fingers kept typing. Nothing came up. Ethan Carter was too common a name. And even if she found him, then what? She'd already humiliated herself enough for one day. Victoria stood, paced to the window, back to the desk. Her office suddenly felt suffocating. 63 floors up, surrounded by luxury and power, and she couldn't breathe. She grabbed her purse and left. Jennifer looked up in surprise as Victoria strode past. "Ms. Hale, your 2 p.m. Cancel everything." "Everything?" Did I stutter? Jennifer flinched, and Victoria immediately felt something twist in her chest. When had she become the kind of person who made young assistants flinch? She knew exactly when. She'd become that person deliberately, methodically, because fear was easier to maintain than respect. Victoria took the elevator down, walked out into the December afternoon, and started walking. No destination, no plan, just walking. New York in December was brutal, wind cutting between buildings, snow turning to slush underfoot. Victoria's ruined designer shoes were absolutely not made for this. But she kept walking anyway. She passed store windows decorated for the holidays, families shopping together, street vendors selling hot chocolate and roasted chestnuts, a Salvation Army volunteer ringing a bell by a red kettle. Victoria pulled out her wallet, dropped a $100 bill into the kettle without stopping. "Bless you," the volunteer called. Victoria didn't respond. She just kept walking. Her phone kept buzzing. She ignored it. After 40 minutes, her feet were numb and her nose was running. Victoria realized she had no idea where she was. Somewhere in the West Village, maybe. She'd been so lost in thought she'd stopped paying attention. A small bookstore caught her eye. The reading corner in faded gold letters. It looked old, cramped, completely impractical. Victoria pushed open the door. The warmth hit her immediately. So did the smell. Old paper, coffee, something cinnamon. The store was narrow, shelves crammed floor to ceiling. A fat orange cat dozed on the counter. "Help you find something?" An older woman looked up from her book. She wore reading glasses on a chain and a cardigan with cat hair on it. "Just browsing." The woman shrugged and went back to her book. Victoria wandered the aisles. Fiction, philosophy, poetry. A whole section of children's books with worn spines, clearly read many times. She picked one up, Where the Wild Things Are, and stared at the cover. Had she ever read this as a child? She couldn't remember. "That's a good one." Victoria turned. A young mother stood there, maybe 28, holding a toddler on her hip. "My son loves it," the woman continued. "Reads it every night." Victoria looked at the toddler, who was gnawing on his fist and staring at her with huge eyes. How old? 18 months, and already a tyrant. The mother said it with pure love. Victoria felt something ache in her chest. "He's lucky to have you." The woman laughed. "Tell him that at 3 a.m. when he's screaming for no reason." She moved past to the children's section, bouncing the toddler and singing softly. Victoria stood there holding the picture book, feeling like an alien observing a species she'd never understand. She bought the book. Didn't know why. Just handed it to the woman at the counter along with $40. It's $12.50, the woman said. Keep the change. Outside, the book felt heavy in her purse. Victoria started walking again. Her feet carried her north, almost on autopilot, past Washington Square Park, up into the village. When she finally stopped, she realized with a jolt where she was. Amsterdam Avenue, half a block from Rosie's Cafe. Victoria stood there in the falling snow, staring at the lit windows. She could see people inside, warm, together, laughing over coffee and conversations. She should leave, should call Marcus, go home to her penthouse, forget this entire ridiculous day. Instead, she walked toward the cafe. She stopped outside the window. Through the fogged glass, she could see the counter, the mismatched tables, Rosie behind the register, Maria taking orders, no sign of Ethan or his daughter. Of course not. It was after 2 p.m. now. They'd left hours ago. Victoria turned to leave and nearly collided with someone coming up the sidewalk. Whoa, sorry, The man stopped. Oh. Ethan Carter stood there holding a bag of groceries, Chloe's hand in his. They both stared at her. Nobody moved. Finally, Chloe broke the silence. You changed your coat. Victoria looked down at herself. She'd forgotten she'd taken off the ruined coat, was just wearing her dress and heels in 30-degree weather. Yes. Ethan's expression was unreadable. Wary, maybe. Protective. He shifted slightly, positioning himself between Victoria and Chloe. The gesture stung more than it should have. Are you following us? Ethan asked quietly. No, I was walking, and I ended up here, and Victoria stopped. She sounded insane. I'm not following you. Okay. They stood in awkward silence. Snow fell between them. Chloe tugged on Ethan's hand. Daddy, she's shivering. That's not our problem, Bug. But, Chloe... The little girl looked at Victoria, then at her father, clearly torn. Victoria found her voice. I wanted to apologize, properly. For this morning. Ethan's eyebrows rose. Okay. I handled things badly. The coffee, the table, Mr. Harrison, all of it. I was wrong. Okay, Ethan said again. Victoria waited for more, but he just stood there, watching her with those steady eyes. That's it? She said. Just okay? What do you want me to say? You apologized. I heard you. Okay. Victoria realized she had expected something. Forgiveness, maybe. Or acknowledgement. Something to make her feel less horrible. I don't know. Ethan shifted the grocery bag to his other arm. Look, it's cold. We need to get home. I hope you figure things out. He started to move past her. Wait. Victoria didn't know why she said it. I bought this. She pulled out the picture book, held it out to Chloe. The little girl's eyes lit up. Wild Things, I love this one. Chloe, we can't, Ethan started. Please, Victoria interrupted. I don't know why I bought it. I don't have kids. I don't know any kids. It should go to someone who'll actually read it. Chloe looked at her father with pleading eyes. Ethan sighed. What do you say, Bug? Thank you. Chloe took the book carefully, like it was precious. This is really nice of you. You're welcome. They stood there for another awkward moment. Then Chloe said, Do you want to walk with us? We're going home. It's not far. Chloe, Ethan said warningly. What? She looks cold and sad. We can't just leave her. She's a grown woman. She can take care of herself. My daddy says nobody should be alone when they're sad, Chloe told Victoria seriously. Victoria felt her throat tighten. Your daddy says a lot of wise things. He's pretty smart, except about vegetables. He thinks I can't tell when he hides them in my food, but I totally can. Despite everything, Victoria almost smiled. Ethan was watching her carefully. You don't have a coat. Where's your car? I walked from Midtown. That's like 40 blocks. I wasn't paying attention. Ethan and Chloe exchanged a look. Some kind of silent communication passed between them. Finally, Ethan sighed. Fine, walk with us. But just to the corner. Then you're calling your car. I don't want to impose. You're already imposing. Come on before we all freeze. They started walking. Chloe skipped between them, already absorbed in her new book. So, Ethan said after half a block, you really just walked 40 blocks in heels? Apparently. Why? Victoria thought about the office, the canceled meetings, the hours of pacing. I needed to think. About what? About whether I've become someone I don't recognize. Ethan glanced at her. And? I have. He nodded like this made perfect sense. Yeah, that happens. You say that like it's normal. It is normal. People lose themselves all the time. Jobs, relationships, just life beating them down. The trick is noticing before it's too late. What if it's already too late? Then you start over. Victoria looked at him. Just like that? Start over? Just like that. They walked another block. Chloe pointed out interesting things, a dog in a sweater, Christmas lights, a particularly well-formed icicle. Daddy, can we show her the thing? Ethan hesitated. Bug, I don't think... Please, it's on the way. He looked at Victoria. Do you have somewhere you need to be? Victoria thought about her penthouse. Empty except for furniture chosen by an interior designer. No. All right, but just for a minute. Chloe led them down a side street to a community garden, closed for winter but still visible through the fence. Someone had built a small snowman inside, complete with a carrot nose and stick arms. We made him last week, Chloe announced proudly. His name is Frederick. Victoria stared at the lopsided snowman. Frederick? Daddy says every snowman deserves a distinguished name. I said no such thing. You named him. You said it sounded good. Ethan rolled his eyes, but he was almost smiling. Victoria realized this was what she'd been missing. Not success or power or control. This, the easy warmth between a father and daughter, the inside jokes and gentle teasing and complete unselfconscious love. She'd traded all of that for a corner office and a view of Manhattan. He's a very handsome snowman, Victoria said quietly. Victoria Samoan. Thanks. We gave him a good life before he melts. Chloe pressed her face against the fence. Daddy says nothing lasts forever, so we should appreciate things while they're here. Your daddy says a lot of things. That's because he thinks a lot. Sometimes at night I hear him thinking really loud. Ethan's face tightened almost imperceptibly. Come on, Bug. It's getting late. They continued walking. The conversation drifted, Chloe talking about school, Ethan making dry comments, Victoria mostly listening. It felt surreal. This morning she'd been screaming at these people. Now she was walking through their neighborhood like some kind of friend. Finally, they reached a building that had seen better days. The brick was stained, the steps cracked. A broken intercom hung by wires. This is us, Ethan said. Victoria looked up at the building, then at Ethan, really looked at him. Saw the worn jacket, the grocery bag full of store-brand items, the careful way he watched every dollar, and she'd screamed at a waitress over coffee temperature while wearing a $3,000 coat. Thank you, she said, for walking with me. Thank Chloe. It was her idea. Chloe was already halfway up the steps. Daddy, I need to pee. So pee. I'll be right there, Ethan called. Then to Victoria. Call your car. Get somewhere warm. I will. He started up the steps, then paused. Hey. Yes? Whatever you're dealing with, and I'm not asking what it is, you seem like you're trying. That counts for something. Does it? My daughter thinks so, and she's usually right about people. Ethan went inside. The door closed behind him. Victoria stood on the sidewalk as snow continued to fall. She pulled out her phone, stared at it, then made a call. Jennifer. Her assistant's voice was cautious. Ms. Hale. Is everything all right? No, but it will be. I need you to do something for me. Of course. Find out everything you can about Rosie's Cafe on Amsterdam Avenue. Ownership, finances, debts, everything. Okay. May I ask why? I'm going to help them. Silence on the other end. Then, I'm sorry, could you repeat that? You heard me. Also, look into programs for single parents, job placement, housing assistance, childcare. I want a full analysis on my desk Monday morning. Ms. Hale, are you feeling well? Probably not, but do it anyway. Victoria hung up and called Marcus. While waiting for her car, she looked up at the building where Ethan and Chloe lived. Lights were coming on in windows. She wondered which one was theirs. A little face appeared in a third-floor window. Chloe, pressing her hands against the glass. She waved. Victoria waved back. The Mercedes pulled up. Marcus got out, opened her door. "Home, Miss Hale?" Victoria got in, but she was still looking up at that window, at the little girl who'd asked if she was sad inside, at the single father who'd stood up to her without fear. "Miss Hale?" Marcus prompted. "Yes, home." As they drove away, Victoria made a decision. She'd spent 10 years becoming the ice queen of Wall Street. Maybe it was time to figure out who she'd been before that, who she could still become. It wouldn't be easy. She'd burned bridges, destroyed relationships, built walls so high she'd forgotten what was on the other side. But a 7-year-old girl had called her brave for apologizing. Maybe that was a place to start. Victoria looked at her reflection in the car window. The cold, perfect face looked back at her. "I'm going to change," she told her reflection. It didn't respond. But for the first time in years, Victoria felt something stirring inside her that wasn't anger or ambition or the constant need to prove herself. It felt almost like hope, and it terrified her completely. Monday morning came too fast. Ethan stood in the bathroom of their studio apartment, staring at himself in the cracked mirror while Chloe ate cereal at their tiny table. The reflection looking back at him was the same as always: tired eyes, stubble, he didn't have time to shave properly, the perpetual worry line between his eyebrows that hadn't existed 3 years ago. "Daddy, you're doing the staring thing again," Chloe called through the door. "I'm brushing my teeth." "No, you're not. I can see you from here. You're just looking at yourself weird." Ethan grabbed his toothbrush with unnecessary force. Kids saw everything, especially his kid. He'd barely slept since Saturday, kept replaying the encounter with Victoria Hale, both encounters, the confrontation in the cafe, then running into her again outside, looking lost and cold, and nothing like the woman who'd terrorized everyone hours earlier. The book she'd given Chloe sat on their makeshift bookshelf. Chloe had read it 4 times already. "It's from the nice mean lady," she'd explained to him last night. "She can't be both nice and mean, Bug." "Sure she can. People are complicated." 7 years old and already understanding what took most adults decades to figure out. Ethan finished brushing his teeth, splashed water on his face, and came out to find Chloe ready for school, backpack on, coat zipped, boots laced. "Look at you, all responsible." "Mrs. Patterson says responsibility is my superpower." Mrs. Patterson is right. They walked to school together, Chloe chattering about her upcoming book report. Ethan listened with half his attention, the other half stuck on Saturday. On Victoria's face when Chloe had asked if she was sad inside. On the way her mask had cracked, just for a second. He dropped Chloe at PS 173, watched her run to join her friends, then headed to work. Ethan worked at the New York Public Library on 5th Avenue, shelving books and helping patrons find what they needed. It didn't pay much, but it came with health insurance and predictable hours. 2 things worth more than gold when you were a single parent. He dropped out of Columbia 6 years ago, 2 semesters from finishing his English degree. His girlfriend had gotten pregnant. They tried to make it work. It hadn't worked. She'd left when Chloe was 6 months old, and Ethan had been figuring it out alone ever since. He was restocking the history section when his phone buzzed. Unknown number. Ethan almost ignored it, probably another debt collector, but something made him answer. "Hello? Mr. Carter, this is Jennifer Klein. I'm calling on behalf of Victoria Hale." Ethan nearly dropped the book he was holding. "I'm sorry, what?" "Ms. Hale would like to meet with you. Would you be available this afternoon?" Why?" "She didn't specify. She asked me to arrange a meeting at your convenience." Ethan's mind raced. This had to be about Saturday. She was going to sue him, or, "Mr. Carter, I work until 5. Would 6 o'clock work? At Rosie's Cafe?" The cafe. Neutral ground. That was either good or very bad. "Okay, 6 o'clock. "Excellent. Ms. Hale will see you then." The line went dead. Ethan stood there in the middle of the stacks, holding a biography of Teddy Roosevelt and trying to understand what just happened. "Hey, Carter!" His supervisor poked his head around the corner. "Those books gonna shelve themselves." "Right. Sorry." But Ethan's hands were shaking as he worked. Victoria Hale wanted to meet with him. The billionaire he'd embarrassed in front of a cafe full of people wanted to meet. This was bad. This was really bad. By 5:30, Ethan had convinced himself he was about to be destroyed. She'd probably consulted with lawyers all weekend, found some way to make his life hell. Rich people did that, didn't they? When you challenged them, they crushed you. He picked up Chloe from the after-school program, trying to keep his anxiety off his face. "Can we go to Rosie's for dinner?" Chloe asked as they walked. "Actually, I need to meet someone there. Can you hang out at Mrs. Chen's for an hour?" Mrs. Chen was their neighbor, a widow who watched Chloe sometimes in exchange for Ethan fixing things around her apartment. "Is it the nice, mean lady?" Ethan stopped walking. "How did you— Oh! You have your worried face? You only get that face for important stuff, and she's the most important thing that happened this weekend. She's not important. She's just— I don't know what she is." "She's sad," Chloe said simply. "I could tell. Sad people get mean sometimes because they don't know what else to do with the feelings." Ethan looked at his daughter, wondering not for the first time if she was actually an old soul in a 7-year-old body. "When did you get so smart?" "I've always been smart. You're just noticing now." Mrs. Chen was happy to take Chloe. Ethan made it to Rosie's at 5:58, his heart pounding. Victoria was already there. She sat at a table in the back, not the one she'd occupied Saturday. She was wearing different clothes, still expensive but less severe. A sweater instead of a business suit. Her hair was down. She looked almost normal. Almost. Rosie caught Ethan's eye as he entered, raised her eyebrows in question. He shrugged back. He had no idea what was happening either. Victoria stood when she saw him. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming. I wasn't sure I had a choice." "You always have a choice." She gestured to the seat across from her. "Please." Ethan sat warily. Maria appeared with coffee, his usual order, and quickly disappeared again. They looked at each other across the table. "I'm not here to threaten you," Victoria said finally, "or sue you, or whatever you've been imagining all day." "How did you know I was imagining Because I would be too, if our positions were reversed." She wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I wanted to talk to you about Saturday. I already said I'm not apologizing for— I'm not asking you to." Victoria took a breath. I'm trying to thank you." Ethan blinked. "What?" "You were right. Everything you said. I was cruel to Mr. Harrison, to Maria, to everyone. I've been cruel for so long I forgot what it felt like to be called out on it." She met his eyes. "Nobody's done that in years. So thank you." Ethan had prepared for threats, for lawyers, for every possible version of this conversation except this one. "You're welcome." "I spent all weekend thinking about my company, my life, who I've become, and I realized I don't like the answer." Victoria's hands tightened on her cup. "I built an empire and lost myself. Standard story, right? Ambitious woman sacrifices everything, becomes successful and miserable." "I don't know if it's standard." "It is. Trust me. There are thousands of us, maybe millions. We climb and climb and climb, and then we look down and realize we're standing on bodies." Ethan didn't know what to say to that. Victoria continued. "Your daughter asked if I was sad inside. The answer is yes. I've been sad for so long I forgot there was any other option." She paused. "I want to change that." "Okay, that's good. I want your help." Ethan nearly spilled his coffee. "My help? With what?" "I'm starting something, a foundation. Programs for single parents, job placement, housing assistance, childcare support. Everything I wish had existed when I was struggling." "You struggled?" 20 years ago, I was living in a studio apartment in Queens working 3 jobs. My mother had just died. I had nothing." Victoria's voice went flat. "I clawed my way out, but I did it by becoming someone I hate. I want to fix that." Ethan was trying to process this. "And you need me because you understand the reality in ways I've forgotten. You're living it. I want to build something that actually helps people, not just another vanity project that looks good on paper." She leaned forward. "I need someone who'll tell me the truth, someone who's not afraid of me." "Plenty of people aren't afraid of you." "Name one." Ethan opened his mouth, closed it. He couldn't. "Exactly," Victoria said. "You stood up to me in a room full of people who were too scared to breathe wrong. That's what I need. someone who'll push back when I'm being an idiot. I don't know anything about running a foundation. Neither do I. We'll figure it out together. I have a job. I have Chloe. I can't just... It would be paid. Well paid. Enough to get you out of that studio apartment and into something with an actual bedroom for your daughter. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. This was insane. You didn't just partner with billionaires who'd screamed at you 72 hours ago. But he thought about Chloe sleeping behind a shower curtain, about the hospital bills still piling up from when she'd had pneumonia last year, about the way she pretended not to notice when he watered down the orange juice to make it last longer. "Why me?" he asked. "You could hire anyone, someone with actual experience. Because your 7-year-old daughter taught me more about humanity in 30 seconds than an entire MBA program did in 2 years. Victoria's voice cracked slightly. "Because when I was standing outside your building Saturday, freezing and lost, you could have slammed the door in my face. Instead, your daughter invited me to walk with you." That was all Chloe. "You raised her. That means something." They sat in silence. Maria refilled their coffee without a word. Finally, Ethan said, "I need to think about it." "Fair enough. And if I say yes, I need promises. Real ones. Name them. This isn't about tax breaks or good PR. We actually help people." "Agreed. If you go back to being the ice queen who screams at waitresses, I walk, no matter how much you're paying me." Victoria smiled, a real smile, not the cold one from Saturday. "Agreed. And Chloe comes first, always. If she needs me, I'm gone. Meeting, presentation, doesn't matter." "Of course." Ethan studied her face, looking for the catch. There was always a catch. "What do you get out of this?" he asked. "Really?" Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was soft. "Maybe a chance to remember who I was before I became this. Maybe a reason to get up that isn't about crushing competitors or expanding market share." She looked out the window at the snowy street. "Your daughter asked if I was sad. Nobody's asked me that in a decade. Nobody's cared enough to ask." "That's not true. Someone must..." "My assistant is terrified of me. My board fears me. I had a boyfriend once, 5 years ago. He proposed. I said no because marriage would be a distraction from Q3 earnings." Victoria laughed, but it sounded painful. "I have a penthouse worth $12 million. I eat dinner alone every night in front of my laptop. I can't remember the last time someone touched me without wanting something." Ethan felt something shift in his chest. He recognized that loneliness. He'd felt it himself, late at night after Chloe fell asleep, wondering if this was all life would ever be. "I'll think about it," he said again. "That's all I'm asking." Victoria pulled out a business card, wrote something on the back. "My personal cell. Not many people have this number. Call me when you decide." She stood to leave. "Ms. Hale?" "Victoria, please." "Victoria, if I do this, you need to understand something." "What's that?" "I'm not going to fix you. Nobody can fix another person. You have to do that yourself." Victoria's eyes glistened slightly. "I know, but maybe you can remind me what I'm aiming for." She left. Ethan sat there staring at the business card, trying to figure out if he'd just been offered a genuine opportunity or the world's most complicated trap. Rosie appeared at his table, sat down uninvited. "So, what did the Ice Queen want?" "She offered me a job." Rosie's eyebrows shot up. "Doing what?" "Helping run a foundation for single parents." "And you said?" "I said I'd think about it." Rosie studied his face. "You're going to say yes." "I don't know that." "I do. You're thinking about Chloe's bedroom, about her needing new boots, about all the things you can't give her on a librarian's salary." Ethan slumped in his chair. "Is it that obvious? Only to someone who's known you since Chloe was in diapers." Rosie patted his hand. "But be careful. Rich people, they don't do things without reasons, even the ones trying to be good." "You think she's lying?" "I think she's hurt and lonely and looking for something to fix her. And you can't be that thing, Ethan. You've got your own life to live." "I know." But he was already thinking about it, already imagining what it would mean: a real apartment, financial security, the ability to give Chloe opportunities he'd only dreamed of, and maybe, a small voice whispered, a chance to help someone who seemed as lost as he'd felt 3 years ago when Chloe's mother left. He picked up Chloe from Mrs. Chen's apartment. She was helping fold laundry, chattering away about her day. "How was your meeting?" Chloe asked as they walked home. "Weird." "Good weird or bad weird?" "I don't know yet." That night, after Chloe fell asleep behind her curtain, Ethan sat on his mattress and stared at Victoria's business card. His phone sat next to it, accusing him of cowardice every time he looked away. This was crazy. He should throw the card away. Keep his safe, predictable life. But safe and predictable meant Chloe never getting her own room. Meant struggling forever. Meant always choosing between paying rent and buying groceries. Ethan picked up his phone. Put it down. Picked it up again. At 11:47 p.m., he sent a text to Victoria's number. "I'll do it, but we need to talk details. And I mean real details, not vague promises." The response came 30 seconds later. "Tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office." And Ethan, "Thank you." He stared at her message. She'd called him Ethan, not Mr. Carter. What was he getting himself into? The next morning, Ethan called in sick to the library for the first time in 18 months. He dropped Chloe at school, then took the subway to Midtown. Hale Technologies Tower loomed over Fifth Avenue like a glass and steel monument to ambition. Ethan felt completely out of place walking through the marble lobby in his thrift store jacket. The security guard looked at him like he'd wandered in by mistake. "I have a meeting with Victoria Hale." The guard's expression shifted from dismissive to shocked. "You're on the list." "Okay. 63rd floor." The elevator was faster than any elevator had a right to be. Ethan's ears popped. When the doors opened, a young woman in a designer suit was waiting. "Mr. Carter, I'm Jennifer, Miss Hale's assistant. Please follow me." The office was all glass and chrome and views that made Ethan dizzy. Jennifer led him through a maze of cubicles where everyone seemed to be working at triple speed. They stopped at a door. Jennifer knocked once. "Come in," Victoria's voice called. Jennifer opened the door, gestured for Ethan to enter, then disappeared. Victoria's office was bigger than Ethan's entire apartment. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed all of Manhattan spread below. The furniture probably cost more than he'd earned in his entire life. Victoria stood by the window, but she turned when he entered. She was wearing a business suit again, back in her armor, but her expression was open, nervous even. "You came." "I said I would." "People say things, doesn't mean they follow through." She gestured to a chair. "Please, sit." Ethan sat. The chair was more comfortable than his mattress. Victoria sat across from him, suddenly all business. "I had my lawyers draft a preliminary contract. Before you panic, it's fair, more than fair. I want this to work." She slid a folder across the desk. Ethan opened it and nearly choked. The salary figure had way too many zeros. "This can't be right." "It is. You'll be director of community outreach. That's the market rate." "For someone with experience, maybe. I shelve books for a living. You raise a child alone while working full-time and managing to be a decent human being. That's harder than anything most of my executives do." Victoria leaned forward. "I'm serious about this, Ethan. I want to build something real, something that actually changes lives. But I can't do it alone." Ethan read through the contract. It was written in language he barely understood, but certain phrases jumped out. Health care, retirement matching, paid leave. There's a clause here about housing assistance. That's for you, part of the compensation package. We'll help you find a 2-bedroom apartment, something safe, with good schools nearby. "Why are you doing this?" Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Because Saturday morning, I looked in a mirror and hated what I saw. Because a 7-year-old girl showed me more compassion than I've shown anyone in years. Because I'm 30 years old and completely alone and I don't want to be this person anymore." Her voice cracked on the last words. Ethan set down the contract. "You need to talk to someone, a therapist. This isn't something a job can fix." "I know. I have an appointment Thursday." Victoria smiled weakly. "See? I'm trying." "Good." They sat there in silence. Outside the windows, Manhattan gleamed in the December sun. "If I sign this," Ethan said slowly, "things change between us. This becomes professional. There are boundaries." "I know. And if those boundaries get weird, I walk. No hard feelings, but I walk." "Understood." Ethan picked up the pen Victoria had placed on the folder. He thought about Chloe, about giving her a real bedroom, real opportunities, about not having to choose between rent and food. He thought about Victoria, alone in this massive office, surrounded by luxury and drowning in loneliness. He thought about Mr. Harrison and Maria and every person who'd ever needed help and been turned away. Ethan signed the contract. Victoria released a breath she'd been holding. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. You might hate working with me." "I doubt that." She stood, extended her hand. "Welcome to Hale Technologies, Director Carter." Her hand was cold in his. Or maybe his was cold. Either way, the handshake felt like stepping off a cliff. "When do I start?" "Monday. That gives you a week to give notice at the library. Arrange things for Chloe." Victoria pulled out another folder. "These are some apartments in your neighborhood. Decent size, good schools. Pick whichever one you like. The company will cover the security deposit and first month's rent." Ethan flipped through the listings. They were all nicer than anywhere he'd ever lived. "This is too much." "It's what you deserve." Victoria's voice was firm. "You're going to help me change lives, Ethan. Let me help change yours too." He wanted to argue, wanted to say this was happening too fast, that people didn't just transform overnight, that billionaires didn't actually care about people like him. But he looked at Victoria's face and saw genuine hope there, fragile and terrified, but real. "Okay," he said. "Okay? Okay, let's change some lives." Victoria smiled, the real smile again, not the corporate one. "I'll have Jennifer set up meetings with the team. We'll need to—" "Victoria." She stopped. "Slow down. One step at a time. We can't fix everything in a day." She laughed, and it sounded almost free. "Right, one step at a time." Ethan left the office an hour later with a signed contract, apartment listings, and a head full of plans. He barely remembered the elevator ride down. On the street, he called Chloe's school. "Hi, this is Ethan Carter. I need to pick up my daughter early. Family emergency." Except it wasn't an emergency. It was the opposite. When Chloe came out of the building, she took one look at his face. "What happened?" "How do you feel about having your own bedroom?" Her eyes went huge. "Really? Really?" Chloe threw herself at him, nearly knocking him over. Ethan held his daughter tight, feeling something in his chest that he'd almost forgotten. Hope. It was terrifying and exhilarating and completely insane. But for the first time in 3 years, Ethan Carter believed things might actually get better. He had no idea that choosing to help Victoria Hale would change everything, not just for him and Chloe, but for the woman in the glass tower who'd forgotten how to be human. One step at a time, they'd both said. Neither of them knew just how many steps that journey would take, or where it would finally lead them. The new apartment smelled like fresh paint and possibilities. Chloe ran from room to room, her footsteps echoing on hardwood floors that didn't creak. "Daddy, there's a closet in my room, a whole closet just for me." Ethan stood in the doorway of what was now their living room, holding a box of their belongings and trying to process that this was real. 2 bedrooms. An actual kitchen with a full-size refrigerator. Windows that didn't rattle when the subway passed. Heat that worked. And the bathroom has a bathtub, not just a shower, a bathtub. "I can hear you, Bug. We live in the same apartment now, remember?" Chloe appeared in the hallway, breathless and grinning. "This is the best day of my whole life." Ethan's throat tightened. His daughter thought this ordinary apartment was a palace. He set down the box and pulled her into a hug. "You deserve this. You deserve so much more than this." "I just wanted my own room, Daddy. Now I can put up posters and everything." The move had taken 3 days. Their old studio apartment's contents fit into Ethan's beat-up Honda with room to spare. Now their stuff sat in boxes, looking lost in all the space. Ethan's phone buzzed. "Victoria. How's the move going?" "We're in. Chloe's already claimed the bigger bedroom." "Good. Take the weekend to settle. We'll start fresh Monday morning." "About that, you're having second thoughts." Ethan sat on the floor, leaning against the wall. "I gave my notice at the library yesterday." Gerald cried. "Your supervisor cried?" "He's worked there 37 years. Gets emotional about everything. But yeah, he cried. Said I was making a mistake." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Do you think you are?" Ethan watched Chloe through the doorway, measuring her new room with her arms spread wide. Ask me in 6 months. Fair enough. Get some rest, Ethan. Monday's going to be intense. She hung up. Ethan stared at his phone, wondering what he'd signed up for. That weekend passed in a blur of unpacking and furniture shopping. Victoria had offered to buy them whatever they needed, but Ethan drew the line there. He used his first paycheck advance to get Chloe a bed frame and a desk. The rest they'd figure out slowly. Sunday night, Chloe couldn't sleep. Ethan found her sitting up in her new bed, clutching her stuffed rabbit. What's wrong, Bug? What if the kids at school ask where we got the money? What if they think we're rich now? Ethan sat on the edge of her bed. We're not rich. I got a new job, that's all. A better paying job. But what if they're mean about it? Then they're mean about it. You can't control what other people think. He smoothed her hair back. But you know what you can control? Being the same Chloe you've always been. Kind, smart, ridiculously stubborn. I'm not stubborn. You argued with me for 40 minutes yesterday about whether penguins have knees. Because they do. I looked it up. Ethan kissed her forehead. See? Stubborn. Now sleep. Tomorrow's a school day. Tomorrow's your first day, too. Don't remind me. Monday morning arrived with all the subtlety of a freight train. Ethan put on the one suit he owned, purchased at a thrift store for a job interview 3 years ago, and immediately felt like a fraud. You look handsome, Daddy, Chloe announced over breakfast. I look like I'm playing dress-up. Same thing. He dropped Chloe at school, then took the subway to Midtown. His hands were sweating. He'd worked at the library for 5 years, knew every corner, every regular patron, every creaky shelf. This was different. This was the deep end, and he couldn't remember if he knew how to swim. Jennifer met him in the lobby. Director Carter, welcome. Ms. Hale is in meetings until 10, but she wanted me to show you to your office. My office? Of course. She led him to the 48th floor. The elevator doors opened onto a space that looked nothing like the rest of the building. Instead of corporate sterile, it was warm. Couches instead of cubicles. Plants everywhere. Natural light. This is the community initiatives floor, Jennifer explained. Ms. Hale had it redesigned over the weekend. She said it needed to feel human. Ethan's office was at the end of the hall. It wasn't huge, nothing like Victoria's, but it had windows and a door and a desk with his nameplate already on it. Director Ethan Carter, Community Outreach. This is insane, he muttered. Ms. Hale doesn't do anything halfway, Jennifer said. Your team is waiting in the conference room. Should I tell them you need a minute? My team? 4 people. Ms. Hale hired them last week based on your notes. What notes? I haven't given her any notes. Jennifer smiled. The ones from your conversation Tuesday, about what a real foundation would need. She had it transcribed and acted on it immediately. Ethan remembered that conversation, him rambling nervously about social workers and case managers and people who actually understood poverty. He hadn't realized Victoria was planning to actually do it. Give me 5 minutes, he said. Jennifer left. Ethan sat at his desk and put his head in his hands. What had he done? At 9:15, he walked into the conference room. 4 people looked up at him. 3 women and 1 man, ranging in age from mid-20s to maybe 60. They all had the same expression, curious, cautious, waiting. Hi, Ethan said, then immediately felt stupid. I'm Ethan Carter. I guess I'm running this thing. The older woman smiled. I'm Patricia Williams. I've been a social worker in the Bronx for 32 years. Ms. Hale called me personally last Thursday. I'm Angela Chen, said a woman in her 30s, former director of housing assistance in Queens. I couldn't believe it when Ms. Hale offered me double my city salary. The younger woman introduced herself as Sarah Martinez, fresh out of grad school with a degree in public policy. The man was James Riley, who'd run an after-school program in Brooklyn for a decade before it lost funding. So, Patricia said carefully, what exactly are we doing here? Ethan looked at them. These were real people with real experience, people who'd spent their careers in the trenches while he'd been shelving books. Honestly, I have no idea. Ms. Hale thinks I can help build something meaningful. I think she's possibly insane, but here we are. He sat down. So tell me, What would you do if you had unlimited resources to actually help single parents? The room came alive. Patricia talked about childcare deserts and working parents forced to leave kids alone. Angela described families one rent increase away from homelessness. Sarah had data on employment barriers. James talked about kids who needed structure and couldn't get it because their parents worked 3 jobs. Ethan listened, taking notes, feeling more lost and more certain at the same time. These people knew their stuff. They just needed someone to fight for them. At 10:30, Victoria walked in. The room went quiet. Patricia straightened. Angela's smile became professional. Even James, who seemed unflappable, shifted in his seat. "Don't stop on my account," Victoria said. She was in her full CEO armor, suit, heels, hair pulled back, but her voice was gentle. "What are we solving today?" "Everything," Ethan said. "Apparently." Victoria almost smiled. She sat at the end of the table. "Then let's start with something achievable." Ethan? He wasn't ready, hadn't prepared. But he looked at his notes and started talking. "Most programs fail because they're designed by people who've never lived the problem. We need something different, not charity, partnership." He looked around the table. "What if we started small, 20 families? We help them with rent, childcare, job training, but we also assign them case managers, people like Patricia who actually know them, who show up, who care." 20 families is nothing, Angela said. "There are thousands who need help." "So we prove it works with 20, then scale up," Sarah jumped in. "Start with data, show outcomes, then nobody can argue." "Where do we find the families?" James asked. Victoria spoke for the first time. "We already have a list. Jennifer's been compiling applications since last Monday, over 3,000 so far." The room went silent. 3,000, Ethan's voice cracked slightly. "People are desperate, Ethan. They just need someone to give them a chance." Victoria's expression was unreadable. "So let's give it to them." The meeting lasted 3 hours. By the end, they had the skeleton of a plan. 20 families to start. Comprehensive support for 6 months. Data collection at every step. If it worked, they'd expand. When everyone else left, Victoria stayed. "You did well," she said. "I fumbled through that entire meeting. You listened. You let people with experience lead. That's more than most executives ever do." She stood, walked to the window. "I've been thinking about what you said. About boundaries." "Yeah? I want to be clear. This is professional. You work for me, not with me. For me. That's important." Ethan felt something sink in his chest. "Okay. But..." She turned to face him. "I also want you to know that you can push back. Question me. Tell me when I'm wrong. That's literally why you're here." "So I work for you, but I'm supposed to challenge you?" "Yes." "That's confusing." "Welcome to corporate life." Victoria's professional mask cracked slightly. "How's Chloe liking the new apartment?" "She spent an hour yesterday just opening and closing her closet door." "Kids are easy to please." "You say that like you know." Victoria's face closed down. "I should get back to my meetings." She left before Ethan could apologize. The first month was chaos. Ethan interviewed families, reviewed applications until his eyes crossed, learned more about poverty and bureaucracy than he'd ever wanted to know. Patricia became his lifeline, explaining systems and shortcuts and which agencies to trust. Victoria was everywhere and nowhere. She'd appear in meetings, ask pointed questions, then disappear for days. When she was there, she was all business. When she wasn't, Ethan wondered if he'd imagined their earlier conversations. They selected the 20 families in week 3. Single mothers, mostly. A few single dads. One grandmother raising 3 grandkids after her daughter overdosed. All of them working, all of them struggling, all of them one emergency away from disaster. Ethan met each family personally, learned their stories. A woman named Carmen, who worked as a nurse's aide and couldn't afford her daughter's asthma medication. Marcus, a widower with 2 boys, working security at night and trying to parent during the day. Rachel, who'd fled an abusive relationship and was starting over with nothing. Every story broke his heart a little. Every story reminded him of his own close calls. Week 5, Victoria called him to her office. "The board wants to meet you." Ethan looked up from the budget he'd been reviewing. "Why?" "Because I've allocated $30 million to this project, and they want to know who's running it." $30 million. Victoria, we talked about starting small. 20 families is small, but if it works, we'll need infrastructure, case managers, housing, childcare facilities. That requires investment. And if it doesn't work? Victoria's face was unreadable. Then I lose $30 million and my board's confidence. No pressure. The board meeting was scheduled for Friday. Ethan spent the week preparing, rehearsing, trying not to panic. Thursday night, his phone rang at 11 p.m. Hello? It's me. Victoria's voice was shaky. Sorry, I know it's late. Ethan sat up in bed. What's wrong? Nothing. Everything I don't know. A pause. Can I ask you something? Yeah. Do you think people can actually change? Like, fundamentally? Ethan rubbed his eyes. Is this about tomorrow? It's about everything. I'm sitting here looking at the presentation we made, all these promises to help people, and I'm wondering if I'm full of it. If I'm just playing at redemption while staying exactly the same. You allocated $30 million. That's not playing. Money's easy. I have money. Actually caring, actually showing up, that's harder. Ethan heard something in her voice he hadn't heard before. Raw fear. Victoria, where are you right now? My apartment. Why? Are you okay? Silence. Then quietly, I saw my therapist today. She asked when I last felt happy. I couldn't answer, couldn't even remember. Ethan's chest tightened. That must have been hard. She thinks I have depression, clinical depression. She wants me on medication. Are you going to do it? I don't know. Taking pills feels like admitting defeat. It's not defeat. It's treatment. Same as if you had diabetes or high blood pressure. Victoria laughed, but it sounded broken. Look at you. When did you become a therapist? I'm not. I'm just someone who knows what it's like to be drowning. Were you? Drowning? Ethan thought about those first months after Chloe's mother left. The nights he'd cried in the bathroom so his daughter wouldn't hear. The days he'd considered just giving up. Yeah, I was. What pulled you out? Chloe. She needed me functional, so I got functional. Some days that was all I had. I don't have a Chloe. No, but you have 3,000 people who applied for help. You have 20 families counting on you. You have a whole team ready to change lives. Ethan paused. And you have me, for whatever that's worth. Victoria was quiet for so long he thought she'd hung up. Thank you, she finally whispered. For what? For answering your phone, for not treating me like a boss, for being honest. That's literally my job description. She laughed, real this time. I should let you sleep. The board meeting's at 9. Victoria? Yeah? Take the medication. If your therapist thinks you need it, take it. There's no prize for suffering through this alone. Okay. Promise? I promise. After she hung up, Ethan lay in the dark, staring at the ceiling. The boundaries he'd insisted on were getting blurry. This wasn't just professional anymore. That should probably worry him more than it did. Friday morning arrived too fast. The board meeting was in the main conference room on 63. 12 people sat around a table that probably cost more than Ethan's car. Victoria introduced him with clinical precision. This is Ethan Carter, Director of Community Outreach. He'll present the framework for our single-parent initiative. Ethan stood. His suit felt too tight. His notes looked inadequate. 12 sets of eyes watched him with varying degrees of skepticism. Good morning. I'm going to tell you about 20 families. He ditched the PowerPoint presentation. Instead, he told stories. Carmen and her daughter's asthma, Marcus juggling night shifts and homework help, Rachel rebuilding her life one day at a time. These aren't numbers on a spreadsheet, Ethan said. They're people who work hard and still can't make it, not because they're lazy or irresponsible, but because the system's broken. We're going to fix that, or at least prove it can be fixed. An older man at the end of the table, Peterson, Victoria's CFO, interrupted. Mr. Carter, this is very touching, but what's the ROI? The what? Return on investment. Ms. Hale is proposing we allocate $30 million. What do we get back? Ethan looked at Victoria. She sat perfectly still, face neutral, revealing nothing. You get 20 families off public assistance, Ethan said. You get kids who don't have to choose between food and school supplies. You get parents who can take sick days without losing their jobs. You get people who will remember that Hale Technologies gave them a chance when nobody else would. That's not measurable, Peterson said. Sure it is. Track employment rates, track housing stability, track school attendance for the kids. 6 months in, we'll have data. If it works, we scale. If it doesn't, you've spent $30 million proving something doesn't work. That's cheap compared to most corporate R&D. A woman Victoria's age, board member named Chen, leaned forward. And if we scale successfully, what's the end game? We prove that private sector investment in social programs works. We get other companies to follow. We change the conversation from charity to partnership. Ethan felt himself warming up. Or we just help some people and call that enough. The room was quiet. Then Chen smiled. I like him. He's either very brave or very stupid. Both, Ethan said. The board laughed. Even Peterson cracked a smile. Victoria spoke for the first time. The question isn't whether we should do this. The question is whether we can afford not to. We're sitting on record profits while people are suffering. This is an opportunity to lead. The vote was 9-3 in favor. After the meeting, Victoria caught up with Ethan in the hallway. You ditched the presentation. It felt wrong. They needed to see these people as human, not data points. It was risky. Did it work? Victoria almost smiled. You got your funding. They walked to the elevator together. When the doors closed and they were alone, Victoria's professional mask slipped. Thank you, she said quietly. For last night and for today. I didn't do anything. You did everything. She looked at him, really looked at him, and Ethan saw exhaustion and gratitude and something else he couldn't name. I called my doctor this morning, started the medication. Good. We'll see if it helps. The elevator reached 48. The doors opened. Victoria? She turned. You're going to be okay. I don't know when, and I don't know how, but you are. Her eyes got bright. How do you know? Because you're trying. That's more than most people ever do. She nodded, blinking rapidly. Then the elevator doors closed and she was gone. Ethan walked back to his office in a daze. They'd gotten the funding. The project was real. 20 families were going to get help. And somewhere in the middle of all this, he'd started to care about Victoria Hale as more than just his boss. That was definitely a problem. But it was a problem for another day. Right now, he had families to help and a daughter to pick up from school. The rest would sort itself out. Or it wouldn't. Either way, Ethan was committed now. For better or worse, his life had become tangled up with a billionaire trying to remember how to be human. And despite every logical reason to keep his distance, he found himself hoping she'd succeed. 3 months into the program, Carmen's daughter stopped needing her inhaler every night. Ethan stood in their apartment in the Bronx, watching Carmen explain how the new insurance from her upgraded job covered the preventive medication they'd never been able to afford before. Her daughter, Sophia, was doing homework at the kitchen table, a table that hadn't existed 3 months ago. I keep waiting for it to fall apart, Carmen said quietly, pouring coffee. Waiting for someone to say it was a mistake. It's not falling apart. You're making it work. Because you gave me the chance, all of you. She handed him the coffee. My case manager, Patricia, she came to Sophia's school meeting last week, just showed up, said she wanted to make sure the teacher understood about the asthma. That's her job. Nobody's ever done their job like that for me before. Ethan left an hour later with updates for his weekly report and a drawing Sophia had made. Stick figures labeled Mama, Sophia, and Mr. Ethan, who helps us. He tucked it in his folder carefully. The 20 families were working, not perfectly. Marcus had lost his security job in week 6 and spiraled for 2 weeks before James connected him with better employment. Rachel had a panic attack during her first job interview and almost quit the program entirely. But Patricia talked her through it, and now Rachel worked part-time at a nonprofit while finishing her GED. The data was good, great even. 19 of the 20 families were stable. Employment up, housing secure, kids' school attendance at 97%. But Ethan kept thinking about what Carmen had said, about waiting for it to fall apart. He felt the same way about Victoria. She changed over the past 3 months, not dramatically. She still terrified the board, still worked 70-hour weeks, still had the same sharp edges. But something had softened. She attended site visits now, actually talking to families instead of just observing. She'd started a tradition of buying coffee for the entire community outreach team every Monday. Small things. Human things. And she'd stopped calling Ethan late at night, which should have been a relief, but somehow felt like a loss. They worked together well. Too well, maybe. They developed a rhythm. Ethan handled the families and community partnerships. Victoria navigated corporate politics and funding. They met twice a week to coordinate, professional and efficient. Ethan hated it. Not the work. The distance. He missed the vulnerable woman who'd called him at 11 p.m. asking if people could change. Missed the honesty they'd had before boundaries got in the way. But boundaries were good. Boundaries were safe. Boundaries meant he couldn't get fired for developing feelings for his boss, except he was pretty sure he already had. It was Saturday morning, their traditional Rosie's Cafe morning, when everything shifted. Ethan and Chloe were halfway through pancakes when Victoria walked in. She wasn't supposed to be there. She'd never come back after that first terrible encounter. But there she was, standing in the doorway looking uncertain. Rosie saw her first. The old woman's eyebrows shot up, but she didn't say anything, just watched. Victoria scanned the cafe, found Ethan and Chloe, and walked over. "Hi," she said. Chloe's face lit up. "Victoria! Daddy! It's Victoria!" "I can see that, Bug. Can she sit with us, please?" Ethan looked at Victoria. She was wearing jeans and a sweater. No designer armor, no corporate mask. Just a woman who looked like she desperately needed coffee and maybe company. "Sure," he said. "If she wants to." Victoria slid into the booth next to Chloe. "I hope I'm not interrupting." "You're not interrupting. We're having pancakes. Do you like pancakes?" "Daddy says everyone likes pancakes, but I know that's not scientifically accurate because Maya in my class is allergic to gluten." "I like pancakes," Victoria said softly. Maria appeared, did a double take, then recovered. "Coffee? Please." They sat in awkward silence until Chloe filled it with a monologue about her upcoming science fair project involving plants and music. Victoria listened with what seemed like genuine interest, asking questions that made Chloe explain things 3 different ways. Ethan watched them together and felt something crack open in his chest. When Chloe excused herself to use the bathroom, Victoria turned to him. "I should have called, asked if this was okay." "It's fine." "Is it? Because you look like you swallowed glass." Ethan almost laughed. "I'm just surprised. You haven't been here since I made a complete fool of myself and screamed at an elderly man?" "Yeah, I remember." Victoria wrapped her hands around her coffee cup. "I've been thinking about that day a lot. About how you stood up to me. About Chloe asking if I was sad. Victoria, I was terrified to come back here. Kept thinking about what people would say, how they'd look at me. But my therapist said that was my pride talking, said real change means facing the places you failed. So this is therapy homework? This is me trying to be better." She met his eyes. "And maybe trying to be honest about something else." Ethan's heart started pounding. "What's that?" Before Victoria could answer, Chloe came bouncing back. "Can Victoria come to my science fair? It's on Thursday. Daddy's coming, but you could come too." "Chloe," Ethan started. "I'd love to," Victoria said. Chloe squealed. Victoria smiled, a real, unguarded smile that transformed her entire face. Ethan excused himself to the bathroom and spent 5 minutes staring at his reflection, trying to get his heartbeat under control. This was his boss who signed his paychecks and controlled his job security. He couldn't afford to misread signals or complicate things. But when he came back to the table, Victoria was helping Chloe draw a diagram of her science project on a napkin, their heads bent together. And Ethan thought maybe complications were inevitable. Thursday night, PS 173's gymnasium was chaos. Kids everywhere, science projects ranging from baking soda volcanoes to elaborate displays about renewable energy. Parents clustered around tables, phones out, documenting everything. Ethan found Chloe's display. "Does music help plants grow?" in the back corner. She'd made charts and graphs with help from Sarah on the community team, had actual plants at different growth stages, and wore her Future Scientist t-shirt with pride. "Daddy, look!" She pointed to a blue ribbon on her display. "3rd place. Mrs. Patterson said my hypothesis was really good." "That's amazing, Bug. Is Victoria coming?" "I don't know. She's really busy." I'm here. They both turned. Victoria stood there holding flowers. Actual flowers, like people brought to graduations. These are for you, she told Chloe, for being brilliant. Chloe hugged her, and Victoria froze for just a second before hugging back. When she straightened, her eyes were wet. They spent an hour walking through the science fair. Victoria asked every kid about their project, listened to explanations, told a fifth grader his rocket design was better than half the engineering proposals she'd seen at work. Other parents noticed. Ethan could see them whispering, phones coming out. By tomorrow, photos of Victoria Hale at a public school science fair would probably be circulating. She didn't seem to care. When the fair ended, they walked Chloe home together. The spring air was finally warm, the city coming alive after winter. Thank you for coming, Ethan said. She was so excited. I was excited too. Victoria looked down at Chloe between them. I can't remember the last time I went to something just because I wanted to, not because it was networking or strategy. How does it feel? Terrifying and good. They reached Ethan's building. Chloe was yawning, her blue ribbon clutched in one hand. I should get her to bed, Ethan said. Right, of course. Victoria hesitated. Ethan, what I was trying to say at Rosie's... Victoria! A man's voice interrupted. They turned. A photographer stood 20 feet away, camera up. Victoria Hale, is this your family? Are you dating? When's the wedding? More appeared, materializing from doorways and cars, cameras flashing, questions shouted. Ethan instinctively pulled Chloe behind him. Victoria stepped forward, and in an instant, the warm woman from the science fair vanished. The Ice Queen returned. This is a private citizen and his daughter. You're harassing them. Leave, now. Just a few questions. Whoa. I said leave. Her voice could have frozen lava. The photographers hesitated, then slowly dispersed. Victoria turned back to them. The mask was still in place, but Ethan saw her hands shaking. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have come. Hey. Ethan touched her arm gently. It's okay. It's not okay. Now there are going to be photos, speculation, articles. Let them write articles. We didn't do anything wrong. Victoria looked at him like he'd spoken a foreign language. You don't understand. They'll make up stories. They'll say, I'm using you for PR, or you're using me for money, or... Victoria, breathe. She stopped, took a breath. Chloe tugged on Victoria's sleeve. The mean people with cameras are gone. You don't have to be scary anymore. Victoria's expression crumbled. She knelt down to Chloe's level. I'm sorry you had to see that. It's okay. You were protecting us. Like Daddy protects me. Victoria looked up at Ethan with something raw in her eyes. I should go. Or you could come upstairs. Have some tea. Let the photographers get bored and leave. I don't want to impose, but you're not imposing, Chloe said firmly. Your family. The word hung in the air. Victoria stood slowly. Okay. Upstairs, Ethan made tea while Victoria sat on their second-hand couch, looking completely out of place in her designer clothes. Chloe showed her the bedroom, the closet, the bathtub, everything she'd been excited about 3 months ago. And this is Frederick, Chloe pointed to a photo on her nightstand. Well, a picture of Frederick. He melted, but Daddy took a photo first. The snowman, Victoria said softly. I remember. After Chloe went to bed, Ethan and Victoria sat in the living room. The silence stretched. This is weird, Ethan said finally. Yeah. We work together. We see each other constantly. But this feels different. Victoria stared at her tea. Because it is different. At work, we have roles. Here, we're just people? Terrifying people who don't know how to be in the same room without an agenda? Ethan laughed. Speak for yourself. My agenda is drinking tea and not falling asleep before 9:30. It's 8:15. I'm tired. Victoria smiled, then the smile faded. I need to tell you something, what I was trying to say Saturday before the photographer interrupted. Ethan's chest tightened. Okay. I've been seeing my therapist twice a week. We've been working through a lot. My childhood, my mother's death, why I built these walls. She set down her tea. And we keep coming back to one thing. I'm lonely. I've been lonely for so long I forgot there was any other way to live. Victoria treated. Let me finish, please. She took a shaky breath. The medication helps. The therapy helps. But what helps most is knowing someone out there isn't afraid to tell me when I'm wrong. Someone who sees me screw up and doesn't run away. She finally looked at him. I'm talking about you, Ethan, in case that wasn't clear. Ethan's mouth was dry. I know. I'm also aware that this is complicated. You work for me. There's a power dynamic. I could ruin everything by saying this. You could. But I'm saying it anyway because my therapist says I need to be honest about what I want. And I want, her voice cracked, I want to not be alone anymore. I want someone to watch science fairs with, and drink tea with, and call when I'm having a bad day. Victoria, I'm not asking for anything. I know this is impossible. I just needed to say it out loud once, to acknowledge that something changed between December and now, that you changed something in me. She stood, preparing to leave. Ethan stood too. You really think I haven't noticed? Victoria froze. What? That something changed? That this got complicated? He took a step closer. I've been fighting it for 3 months, telling myself it's just gratitude or proximity or some weird savior complex, but it's not. Ethan, you terrified me in that cafe. Then you became human. Then you became someone I actually liked. Then you became someone I... He stopped, the words too big to say out loud. Someone you what? Victoria's voice was barely a whisper. Someone I can't stop thinking about. The space between them felt electric. This is a terrible idea, Victoria said. Probably. You could get hurt. I could ruin your career. You could? I'm still figuring out how to be a functional person. I'm on antidepressants. I cry in therapy. I'm a mess. So am I. I'm a single dad who lives paycheck to paycheck and has no idea what I'm doing most of the time. We're completely wrong for each other. Completely. Victoria closed the distance between them. So why does this feel right? Ethan didn't have an answer, so he kissed her instead. It was soft, tentative, terrifying. Victoria's hands came up to his chest, to push him away, he thought at first. But instead she held on, kissing him back like she was afraid he'd disappear. When they pulled apart, both breathing hard, Victoria's eyes were wide. We can't... I shouldn't have... Yeah, this is so unprofessional. Completely. People will talk. The board will have opinions. The media will make up stories. Probably. Victoria laughed, shaky and breathless. You're not helping. I don't want to help. I want... Ethan cupped her face gently. I want to see where this goes. If you want that too. I want that so much it scares me. Good. I'm terrified too. They stood there in Ethan's tiny living room, foreheads pressed together, trying to figure out how to navigate something neither of them had planned for. We need rules, Victoria said finally. Okay. At work, we're professional. Completely professional. Agreed. And Chloe comes first, always. If this gets complicated, Chloe comes first, Ethan confirmed. Non-negotiable. And we're honest. Brutally honest. No games, no pretending. I can do that. Victoria pulled back slightly. I'm going to screw this up. Probably multiple times. So will I. I don't know how to be in a relationship. I haven't dated anyone seriously in 6 years. I haven't dated anyone at all in 3 years. We'll figure it out together. She kissed him again, slower this time. Less desperate, more certain. When she left 20 minutes later, Ethan stood at the window and watched her get into her car. She looked up, saw him, waved. He waved back, feeling like his entire world had just shifted on its axis. The next morning, photos were everywhere. Victoria at the science fair. Victoria outside Ethan's building. Headlines screaming speculation. Ice Queen's secret family. Billionaire's mystery man. Victoria Hale's shocking new romance. Ethan's phone started ringing at 6 a.m. Patricia called first. Have you seen the internet? No, I've been avoiding it. Don't, it's everywhere. Half the articles are terrible, but some are actually sweet. There's one calling you her unlikely redemption arc. I'm not her redemption arc. Tell that to Twitter. Victoria called at 6:30. I'm handling this. PR is releasing a statement. What kind of statement? The kind that confirms we're seeing each other and tells everyone else to mind their own business. Victoria, you don't have to. Yes, I do. I'm done hiding, done pretending. We're together, and people can deal with it or not. At work Monday morning, the whispers were immediate. Ethan walked into the building and felt every eye on him. Jennifer met him at the elevator. Ms. Hale wants to see you. Is she angry? She's Victoria. You'll see. Victoria's office was full. The entire executive team, half the board, and Peterson looking like he'd swallowed something sour. Ethan, Victoria said formally, we need to discuss the community initiative expansion. He blinked. Now? Now. You've proven the pilot program works. 19 out of 20 families stable. The board approved scaling to 200 families. Ethan forgot about the photos, the whispers, everything. 200? And we're opening the first Hale Community Center in the Bronx. Childcare, job training, health services, all in one place. Victoria allowed herself a small smile. You'll be running it, if you want the promotion. Yes, absolutely yes. Peterson cleared his throat. There's the matter of your relationship with Ms. Hale. The board has concerns about conflicts of interest. Before Ethan could respond, Victoria spoke. Mr. Carter earned this promotion through 3 months of exceptional work. Our personal relationship has no bearing on his professional qualifications. If the board disagrees, I'm happy to resign and run this foundation independently. The room went silent. Chen spoke up. Nobody's asking you to resign, Victoria. We just need to establish protocols. Fine. Establish them. But Ethan Carter is the best person for this job, and I won't apologize for recognizing that. The meeting lasted another hour. By the end, they had protocols, oversight committees, and enough bureaucracy to satisfy everyone. When the room cleared, Victoria and Ethan were alone. You didn't have to do that, he said. Yes, I did. You're good at this. They needed to know it had nothing to do with us. Did it? Have nothing to do with us? Victoria considered. I hired you because Chloe asked if I was sad, and you stood up to me when nobody else would. I promoted you because you're excellent at your job. Those are separate things. Are they? They have to be. Otherwise, none of this works. Ethan understood. At work, they were colleagues. Outside work, they were something else. Learning to balance both would be the challenge. The weeks that followed were strange and wonderful and complicated. They went public carefully. Dinner dates where Victoria tried to relax and Ethan tried not to feel out of place in restaurants with more forks than necessary. Movie nights at Ethan's apartment where Victoria sat on the floor with Chloe and laughed at animated films. Quiet Sundays at Rosie's Cafe, which had become their unofficial headquarters. Rosie warmed to Victoria slowly. You're not terrible anymore, she announced one morning. Still not great, but better. I'll take it, Victoria said. Mr. Harrison became a regular part of their Saturday mornings. He'd sit with them, telling stories about teaching while Victoria listened with genuine interest. One week she asked him to consult on the education component of the community center. You want my help? The old man looked stunned. I want the wisdom of someone who spent 42 years teaching kids. If you're willing. He was willing. The community center opened in June. 200 families enrolled immediately, with waiting lists stretching into next year. Patricia led the social work team. Angela handled housing. James ran the after-school programs. Sarah analyzed data and proved that, yes, this approach worked. The media coverage was intense. Some articles were cynical. Billionaire buys redemption with single dad romance. Others were hopeful. Can one woman change corporate philanthropy? Victoria read them all and tried not to care. They'll write what they write, Ethan told her one night. We know the truth. Which is? That you're actually trying, that the families getting help don't care about your motivation, that change is messy and imperfect and real. Victoria kissed him. When did you get so wise? I've always been wise. You're just noticing now. She laughed, and Ethan thought about how that sound had become his favorite thing. But it wasn't all smooth. Victoria still had bad days, days when the depression hit hard and she couldn't get out of bed. Days when she snapped at people and retreated into her old coldness. Days when Ethan wondered if they were fooling themselves. They fought about work-life balance, about Victoria's tendency to throw money at problems, about Ethan's reluctance to accept help. They fought about her working 70-hour weeks and his overprotectiveness of Chloe. But they also learned. Victoria learned that Chloe needed routine and consistency. Ethan learned that Victoria's coldness was armor, not cruelty. They both learned that love, if that's what this was, required showing up even when it was hard. 8 months after that first terrible cafe encounter, Ethan stood in the Bronx Community Center, watching families stream in for the ribbon-cutting ceremony. Carmen was there with Sophia, who'd won her school's science fair, and was already talking about becoming a doctor. Marcus brought his sons, both thriving now that he had stable work and childcare. Rachel stood with a group of other domestic violence survivors, leading a support group Victoria had funded. 200 families. 200 stories of second chances and hard-won stability. Victoria stood at the podium, giving a speech that hit all the corporate notes. But then she paused, looked out at the crowd, and went off script. 9 months ago, I was the meanest person I knew. I screamed at a waitress. I humiliated an elderly man. I was cruel because I thought that's what power looked like. She found Ethan in the crowd. Then someone told me I was wrong, and his daughter asked if I was sad inside, and I realized I'd become someone I hated. The room was completely silent. This center isn't about me. It's about all of you. The families working hard and deserving support, the team making it happen, the community showing up. But it started because one person refused to let me be terrible without consequences. So thank you, Ethan Carter, for seeing something worth saving. The applause was thunderous. Afterward, Chloe ran up to Victoria and hugged her legs. That was a really good speech. You think so?
Yeah, and you didn't even sound like a robot. Victoria laughed and picked her up, something that had taken months to become natural. High praise from you. Ethan watched them together and felt his chest go tight with something that might have been happiness. Later, after the ceremony ended and people dispersed, the three of them walked back to Rosie's cafe. It had become their tradition. Big moments ended with pancakes and coffee at the place where everything started. Rosie had their usual table waiting. They ordered. Chloe built a sugar packet house. Victoria and Ethan just sat there, tired and content. I can't believe this is real, Victoria said quietly. Which part? All of it? The center? The families? You? Chloe? She shook her head. 9 months ago, I was alone in a penthouse, wondering if this was all there was. And now? Now I'm drinking terrible coffee in a cafe with a 7-year-old building architecture and a man who somehow makes me want to be better. The coffee's not terrible, Ethan protested. It absolutely is, but I love it anyway. Chloe looked up. Are you guys being mushy again? Maybe, Ethan said. Gross, but also nice. She returned to her sugar packets. Victoria reached across the table, took Ethan's hand. Thank you. For what? For standing up to me. For giving me a chance. For not running away when things got complicated. You make it sound noble. I was terrified the entire time. Good. I'd be worried if you weren't. They sat there as snow started falling outside, the first snow of the new winter. Almost exactly 1 year since that terrible morning when Victoria had screamed at a waitress and a single father had told her to sit down. 1 year since a little girl had asked if she was sad inside. 1 year since everything changed. Ethan looked at Victoria across the table. This complicated, damaged, brilliant woman who'd somehow become essential to his life. Looked at Chloe, who'd gained not just a bedroom, but a whole other person who showed up for science fairs and movie nights and pancake mornings. It wasn't perfect. Victoria still struggled with depression. Ethan still worried about money despite the comfortable salary. They still fought about boundaries and balance and all the messy realities of blending lives. But it was real. And real, Ethan had learned, was better than perfect any day. Daddy, Chloe said suddenly, do you think Frederick is happy where he is? The snowman? Yeah, do you think he's okay that he melted? Ethan thought about it. I think Frederick did what snowmen do. He existed, brought joy, then transformed into something else. Water for plants, maybe. That seems pretty good. That's very philosophical for 8 a.m., Victoria murmured. I contain multitudes. Chloe nodded seriously. I think we should build a new Frederick this year, but he can be different, because things change, and that's okay. Victoria squeezed Ethan's hand. Yes, she said. Things change. And sometimes, when you're very lucky, They change for the better. They finished breakfast as snow fell on Manhattan, transforming the gray city into something beautiful. Just like the three of them had been transformed, not into anything perfect, but into something better than they'd been before. A billionaire learning to be human. A single father learning to accept help. A little girl teaching both of them about compassion. And a cafe where it all began, still serving coffee and second chances to anyone willing to walk through the door. Outside, the world continued spinning. Articles would be written, critics would criticize, life would throw new challenges their way. But inside Rosie's cafe, three people sat together in comfortable silence, bound by the strange alchemy of circumstance and choice, proving that sometimes the most unlikely connections become the most important ones. Victoria had asked if people could really change. The answer, it turned out, wasn't simple. People didn't transform overnight. They didn't become perfect versions of themselves. They stumbled and backslid and struggled. But with the right push, a confrontation in a cafe, a child's honest question, someone brave enough to stand up and say that's enough, people could begin to change. And sometimes that beginning was all you needed. The rest was just showing up day after day, doing the work, choosing to be better. Not perfect, just better. And in the end, better was enough.